Welcome to the Biz and Tech Podcast. My name is Blake Dowling. Thank you for joining us today. Elections are coming up. The holidays are coming up. Be on the lookout for hacks, cybercrime, bogus emails, phone calls, texts. This is the time of year that hackers monetize the situation. They will look to disrupt your holiday experience and our election process here in the great United States and the state of Florida. Today, we are joined by Skip Foster. Thank you, sir, very much for being here. How are you?
Speaking of hacks, our guest today is Skip Foster. Is that the lead-in that we're doing? I love it. I'm great. I'm honored to be here.
Oh, that's funny. Before we get started, I would like to give a shout out to Magic Mind. Earlier this year, I came across their productivity shots, and I've been working that into my routine every day, every week. It's a nice boost blend of nootropics versus that 10th cup of coffee that we might sometimes indulge in. So shout out to Magic Mind. Check them out. Skip, my friend, you have an awesome background. I was just reading up on it today. Is it correct? You started your career in news in Hickory, doing the sports beat?
Sports writer.
Before we get into your job and your company, Hammerhead, let's talk a little bit about the news. What led you to Hickory and the sports beat and news in general?
Yeah, so I, unlike my kids, I didn't have much of a career plan at Sewanee, University of the South, where I was went to college and wasn't a particularly good student. Started writing sports for the school paper there for no other reason than I was a sports fan. And eventually figured out it was time to get a job and that maybe that was a field. And so I got into it and then kind of started to get my act together and got to do some amazing things as you started out kind of high school sports, but I covered a Duke Carolina game and both the Cameron and the Dean Dome. I got to go to the Masters, covered the Masters for quite a few years.
Awesome.
Charlotte Hornets when they were just getting started as a franchise. It was a fun time in life, and then I got to a point where I realized waiting for 21-year-old multimillionaires to say something interesting at 10:30 at night and then typing it up in a half an hour might not be how I want to spend the rest of my life. So moved over into the news side and then eventually up into management.
Awesome. We all have those pivotal moments in our career, and I can certainly see a parallel in my journey when I was joining the ranks of the music business after booking bands in college and joining Sister Hazel's management company when they signed their deal with Universal. You find yourself at 2 a.m. after a gig, loading out, counting money, whatever it is you're doing. Like, maybe I don't want to be doing this
right
for the foreseeable future. Mm-hmm. Good stuff. All right, well, let's talk Hammerhead. Let's talk present day. Your logo, your mission, so well branded out there on social media. I know what Hammerhead is, but what's the background between the name?
So I'm names are important to me and brands are important, and that's part of the kind of back half of my newspaper career was getting more into the marketing side and the advertising side in addition to the news side. And so I wanted to tie back to my roots and also kind of a forward-looking brand. So in the newspaper business, the Hammerhead is the one or two time a year, really big, bold, two-word, right? Michael hits or war over or so-and-so indicted or whatever.
Right.
It's called a Hammer headline. And so we kind of paired that with, the fact that we are in Florida, we're near the coast, and there was also this. I haven't really talked about this much, but I grew up doing a lot of fishing in Boca Grande, and there was an old mythical hammerhead shark that was known in Boca Grande Pass as for eating all the tarpon, and so it just kind of all of that came together to come up with a really cool name. We've got animation for the logo. If you go to our website, hammerhead.agency, and it's just worked really well for us. People just respond to it. So that's always nice.
That's awesome. It's always great to hear the story behind a name. Excellent one. So tell us, what is the mission of Hammerhead?
Yeah, so we have big barrels. I hate buckets, so I say barrels that
I like
we
it.
work in. One of them is crisis communications. So my list of abilities is pretty short, but three of them happen to be that I was the CEO of a big company, I came up from the news side, and I understand the marketing side. And where those three lines intersect is positions us to uniquely respond to folks that are in crisis. And so we took on a new client over the weekend, and it's nice to be able to help people, right? So you don't wish crisis on anybody. Doctors don't wish illness on anybody, but the fact that they're able to help those folks is really gratifying. And so, some of it is how to deal with with media and messaging, and some of it is just strategy, right? And leaders get rocked by crisis, right? They're used that when they're controlling their own environment, they're really good. When external factors come in, it's tough. So crisis is one. This brand work that we do is really cool and important. Handley Mikic was a brand executive in Atlanta with Coca-Cola. She's a Tallahassee girl, moved up to Atlanta, conquered the world, was running out new brands for Coca-Cola's iced tea product, decided maybe Atlanta was a little too much, right? I mean, I don't know how anybody lives up there with all that crazy traffic and stuff they have. So she moved back down here, and we've been leading folks through brand and rebrand processes. Armor Realty is one of the most recent ones that we've done, and they're really thrilled with what they've done there. And then the third barrel is just good old-fashioned PR, communications, marketing, helping folks get messages out, reach the right audiences. And so those three things are where our kind of bread and butter are.
Awesome. Mark and Armor, their team, they do a great job here in our community. Mm-hmm. Really sharp professionals. In Atlanta, we could comment on that at length. I was an Atlantean myself.
Yeah.
And now when we visit, I have to shift gears into a calm place. Like, okay, traffic's going to start at McDonough.
Yeah.
And you just have to accept it. And that's fine. And you're going to slowly make your way into the city. But yeah, I mean, we get so spoiled here in Tallahassee. I live in Midtown, and our commute to Midtown at Aegis is about 4 minutes if I make the lights. And that's a long stretch from slogging it on 75. Awesome. All right, well, let's go back to journalism. What an exciting career to be in. What were some of those stories you covered over the years, besides the ones you mentioned in sports, that really stuck out to you, whether personally or just something that impacted our nation? What walk us through some of that?
Yeah, so my news career really started in Gastonia, North Carolina, and then Shelby is where I was the editor. And we just had, I was so fortunate to work with some incredibly talented people at a really small town newspaper. And so we were able to really break some really interesting stories that really wouldn't be worth going into today, but were really shaped that community in many respects. And then, of course, 9/11 was when we were when I was in Shelby. And so while we think of that correctly so as a story of international terrorism, and it was also intensely local in every community of America, right? It was it impacted our lives and how we thought about our country. And so we put out one of the few papers that put out an extra edition that day. So by noon, we were printing off a 4-page section. And I remember actually being on a street corner hawking it that day because we didn't have enough bodies to sell it, and people were gobbling that stuff up. And we were doing what newspapers had done for decades, which was provide breaking news coverage to our readers. And so that was really, I'll never forget that, and it was a really special time. Beyond that, stories of public corruption, of natural disaster, of huge, crime. All of those things are the things that stand out. One in particular in Shelby is there was a a shooting in a crime-ridden area, and much like in Tallahassee, we've gotten all too used to those, I'm afraid. And our photographer actually was there when a young child walked out of her house and very matter-of-factly asked who got shot. It was a 4 or 5-year-old little girl.
Jeez.
Well, 4-year-old girls are supposed to ask what's for dinner and can I go play, and that this was asked, and so we turned that who got shot became kind of a calling card for the community to really look at children's issues, how children are impacted by crime, and we ended up holding a big event to get more volunteers to participate in that part of the kind of helping agency world. And so, we did a lot of good stuff in our business, and it became harder and harder to do that as the resources diminished.
Understood. When you got to the Tallahassee Democrat, you were the head honcho there for 5 years, is that
That's
correct?
right. Mm-hmm.
And you were named the Gannett Leader of the Year in 2017, if my memory serves me correct, which
Apparently,
may or may not.
Nobody else was nominated is the only real explanation for that. But
how big was that parent company selection process?
Well, I, of course, didn't even know I was nominated until it happened, and it was a company-wide thing. But truthfully, there's been times in my life, Blake, where I, didn't have incredibly talented, high-quality, good people working with me, and I wasn't much of a leader during those times. Mm-hmm. And when I did, people like William Hatfield and Kerry Throw and all sorts of journalists and salespeople and other support folks, I looked really good. So that was really just a reflection of, and I inherited some of those folks, so I can't even take credit for being a good talent evaluator all the time.
William's awesome.
People don't want to talk about the role of luck in life because we want to take credit for all the great things, and in sports I see this all the time, right? So a field goal hits the upright and we won because we wanted it more. Well, no, you won because there was a margin of error and it fell your way, and that's great. Winning is great. And so these types of things, I was blessed with amazing talent, not just at the management level, but there were some incredible reporters and other folks that helped with that.
Awesome. Yeah, the Democrat has a great team today. I've been a small contributor now for almost 10 years. And the community news, no matter where the industry goes, where technology goes, in my opinion, the local news will always have a huge place in my mind, in my world, because like you said, with 9/11, where did you go for information for breaking news? I went local. I lived in Atlanta at that time, and I went to the local news now to see what's going on. Awesome. So we're not going to dwell on your 2017 Awesome Award. You're giving credit to others, so awesome. But what would you say is the most proudest achievement in your career thus far?
Oh boy, I don't think it's an individual accomplishment. It's just the kind of body of work and people with which I associated all of those years. It was serving a community. My wife was a judge and is now a magistrate, and we kind of joke that she did public service in the public sector, and I did public service in the private sector, right? It was often thankless, and, we were on call 365/24, but it was also hugely gratifying, and just I wouldn't trade it for anything. It was an amazing career.
Excellent. All right. So when you were with the Democrat, how many employees did you all have? 100 plus?
Mm-hmm.
What was that like as an experience, as a leader, as a manager? You alluded to it a little bit, versus what you're doing now with a team that, you can have all in one room at the same time and address the mission of the day. What are your takeaways from one experience to the other?
Well, so so different, right? I mean, the newspaper business was, there was press room and circulation and accounting and all these real disparate functions, and that's one of the kind of amazing. We always said 365 miracles a year producing a paper, so it was
that's good.
Very different, and but I love them both. I've being an entrepreneur and being responsible for making a payroll and growing a business and marketing a new brand versus one that was and is one of the top 3 most recognizable brands in Tallahassee. It's just very different. I reached a point after my newspaper career when I started my own consulting gig that was just Skip Foster Consulting, because I reached a point where, hey, am I going to keep being a one-man show, or am I going to grow and build something? And I chose the latter because I don't know. I think that's I think leading an organization is part of my God-given talent and ability, and so that's the direction that I went. So we'll see if I heard correctly. Sometimes I could swear God is telling me to go play an extra 9 holes of golf, and it turns out that I'm hearing my voice, not his. So anyway, does that answer your question?
It does, and divine intervention plays a role every day. On Saturday, I don't think I could have watched another football game, but I felt a message like you should watch the West Coast games too.
Yeah.
The nooner, the 3 to 7, and then one more. Why not the 10 too?
Right.
And your comments on sports were right on. This time of year, we get a unique perspective here in Florida with the Florida Gators, the Florida State Seminoles, the Miami Hurricanes, and everyone else, even the Jacksonville Jaguars.
Jags, Dolphins, Bucks.
You see people's true colors as fans. You see the community for what it is in the fall. And we get great weather too.
Yeah.
You can't beat it. So what would it surprise us to know about you personally, professionally? What you got?
Yeah, I don't really know. I've got a pretty, transparent social media presence, and I've certainly spoken my mind enough in first person in the newspaper to where I'm not sure there's much that would surprise people. I'm always fascinated by the misimpressions that people have of me, and so my political left-wing friends tend to think I'm a fire-breathing right-winger, and my right-wing friends tend to think I'm a progressive left-winger. And so I always get a chuckle out of that. I'm somewhere in between those things, and these days that's very confounding for a lot of the ideologues who see things very two-dimensionally, and that's just not me.
Can't have input that might not pick one side.
Right.
Can't have thoughts that might not go to one side. It's got to be one or nothing.
I'm not much of a Kool-Aid drinker, and the other thing is I change my mind on things, which is, again, not very in vogue these days. But, how arrogant it is to assume that all of the facts, all of the universe's facts fit neatly into someone's either ideological or theological or sociological view of the world. And so I like to learn, and I'm always really impressed with people who say, I thought X, but I learned a little bit more, and now I think Y, and I think wow, or Z. I think we need a lot more of those people and a lot fewer of the people that think they've got it all figured out, especially by like age 22, right? It's just amazing to me, these young, and I appreciate their passion and conviction, but unless our education system is dramatically improved, what I knew when I was 22 barely fit into a shot glass, and so it's just, I think lifelong learning and a desire to not be contained in the boxes we like to put people in. Maybe that's a little surprising for people to hear.
And you've been putting yourself out there a long time. Aren't we both glad that social media wasn't around when we were in high school or college?
Oh my gosh, yeah.
So we can have that historical look back.
Yeah.
As people, if you do throw it out there, people comment and people do make assumptions. And, I made a statement in my column this weekend where I said, we need to remember, especially around elections, that we're all Americans. Mm-hmm. We are all on the same side.
Right.
Our leaders make it hard to understand that sometimes because there's so much division in government. And, people ask me, oh, do you support, the current president? Did you support the last president? I'm like, that's not what this column's about. This column's about hacking America. Anyway, but.
I think there, and I'm just, you may not want me to talk about this and we can always edit this out, but I think there's a new ideology that really interests me, and it's simply an anti-extreme ideology that really looks off to both the far right and far left and says, hey, these are really not, neither of these ideologies are really healthy or appealing. And I had this hashtag I messed around with called hashtag 2 things both true. And, it can be true that crazy things happening on the right are crazy, but it doesn't mean that crazy things happening on the left aren't also crazy, and vice versa, right? So
it doesn't mute it.
Yeah. So anyway,
no, you're right on. It's I don't know who said it, but more people need to say it. Extremism on anything is usually bad, unless you're talking about charitable giving. Right. Compassion. Yeah. No, you're right on. I was emailing with Fincher Smith this weekend. I was at a pedicure with my wife. It was our anniversary. And if you've never had a pedicure, let's just vote yes for foot massages, ladies and gentlemen. Talk about something that's positive. Wow. Anyway, I saw this column Fincher wrote about supporting a local candidate. And I was like, I just emailed him because he had emailed me about something I wrote earlier in the year. And I was like, Fincher, this doesn't sound like someone you would support. He's like, well, I changed my mind. I'm like, hell yeah man.
Yeah.
I was like, I don't know if I'll vote for that person or the other person, and that doesn't really matter. But I appreciate you sharing it because you're throwing yourself out there.
Absolutely.
And good for you. Yeah, we need more of that in our world. So what'd you do during the pandemic that you might not have normally done? It was a weird time. Did you take up stamp collecting? Did you redecorate the house like we did?
I spent a lot of time working at home, and so I got really close with the dog, and so that was great. I did some, work, moderating some TMH sessions on the pandemic and trying to educate people. So that was, that was also gratifying. And then I had a pretty bad case of COVID. I guess it was an alpha case, so it was before the Delta stuff, and it was it knocked me out for about a month, and I was lucky to avoid being admitted. The good news is no after effect, so I didn't have any kind of long COVID stuff, but it was not fun.
Yeah, I got it for Christmas last year, and cough for about 6 months.
Yeah.
Drive me crazy. One day it just mysteriously went away.
Yeah.
We're going to see a lot of mysteries, I think, in the coming years. And kudos to you for a great social media presence. Thinking about it while we're talking, whether it's sports or weather, it's really on point. And especially with the weather, because, the hurricane trajectory of Ian, was so speculative for so long until, the minute it turned.
Right.
But I was getting news faster from your Facebook page than I was from the Weather Channel.
Well, I hasten to add, always get your, when you're making decisions on life and property, consult the experts. About, I guess it's been 8+ years ago, I really swore off political posts on social media. And man, I hadn't made many good decisions, but this was one of the best decisions I've ever made because it just kind of reduced the spectrum of things that I talked about to mostly just trying to make people laugh or share inspiration, not from me, but from others and that kind of stuff. And then, of course, sports and the weather. And it's tragic to me when I see people whose entire social media persona has been just swallowed up by politics, people who I used to really enjoy because they were a foodie or they were, into technology or into things that I wanted to learn about. And now it's just day in and day out politics. So, if you're listening to this and that describes you, just cut it out.
100%
share
agree.
with. I promise you're not breaking any new ground on politics. But
how many people out there have read a political post on Facebook and said, you know what, they're right. I'm changing my mind.
Yeah, no, it's just
never.
It's just a big. Anyway,
it's where the toxic conversation starts.
Yeah,
Twitter's the worst, and people just consumed by it. And I don't think, I'm sure someone will correct me after we publish this, but I don't think I've ever made a political post.
Yeah,
not ever. I stick to sports.
Don't start.
I stick to sports. Well, it's kind of like what your grandmother said. When you go meet someone for the first time, don't talk about politics, sex, religion, football, and maybe you'll be all right.
Yeah.
And I think about the football part of that. When I go into a first meeting with a client here, I'm like, might be a diehard whatever, Auburn Tiger, Tennessee Volunteer. You don't want to just announce you're a Florida Gator day one because some people, that's a deal breaker.
Yeah.
Josh, we were having a sidebar about Georgia fans prior to the production today, and it was not a positive one, Georgia fans out there. Anyway, last question for today. So if you could time travel, you could go anywhere in the world, where would you go? Who would you see? What would you do?
I have to go back?
Well, I guess for today's purposes, you have to go back.
Ooh.
So you want to go forward, I'm guessing.
Well, yeah, I would love to go forward. I think it would be, biblical times. That's the easy one. I would just want to know, how historically accurate all of that is and chronicle it in much greater detail. And that would be it for me, just to be in that amazing pre-information age time and see firsthand what happened. That's the news guy in me, right? Go back to the greatest story ever told and try to tell it in the modern age. So that would be my answer.
We're going to give that best answer ever. That's a repeating question on the show.
Oh, really?
We're going to give that best answer ever.
Oh, wow.
In 3 years. All right.
You got Heidi Otway next, so she'll beat me for sure. So,
We'll see what Heidi has to say as we get into our full slate of fall episodes. Thank you so much for tuning in today to learn about Skip and his career. How do we learn more about Hammerhead? What's your web address?
Hammerhead.agency. Can email me at skip@hammerhead.agency or call me anytime.
And look for his non-political posts on Facebook and Twitter. He's got a great social presence out there. Also, a closing shout out to Magic Mind. If you haven't checked them out, they're in Venice, California, making nootropics, productivity shots, better than another cup of coffee, as I like to say, because that's my routine. That's it for today's Biz and Tech podcast. We look forward to seeing you next time. As I said earlier, be on the lookout. Russian hackers, American hackers, hackers from everywhere are going to be on the scene this election season and holiday season. Thanks for tuning in. We'll see you next time. Thank you, Skip.
Thanks.
Have a good one.